Hi Vlad, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear just fine.
Wonderful, we are about to start. So, hey everyone, thanks for joining us today for our webinar. And we are very excited for you to join us for a presentation about AMI deployment and especially how to deploy smart meters on a budget. We're going to be talking about best practices for hiring field service technicians, selecting devices for data collection, choosing the right KPI productivity metrics, and of course, selecting the right field service management solution. In case you haven't met us yet, we are Fieldman. We are a work and asset management platform that helps utility vendors, utilities, and municipalities to manage field work in all infrastructure assets, including smart meters. So again, welcome. I'm Anna. I'm from the marketing team, and I will be your host and moderator today. And I'm joined by my amazing colleague, Vlad, who is a CEO at Fieldman, and I will let him introduce himself.
All right, thank you, Anna. Great job putting this together. Your team did fantastic. I really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so um, let's introduce Fieldman. Fieldman is a software for meter deployment as well as asset infrastructure management. Now, before I co-founded Fieldman, I worked for a national deployment company and I was part of some of the largest AMI deployment projects in the country. Some of them are here on the screen: Duke Energy and Entergy, where I was a part of the team where we deployed 3.1 million electrical meters over 5 different territories, and it was a large project. So we know AMI. We have experience. We have worked on large, small, medium, all kinds of different projects, and had seen plenty of issues that we learned from. And actually, this is how and why we build the product, so we can help folks like yourself. Like Anna said, I'm CEO and co-founder of Fieldman. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. Back to you, Anna.
Awesome. Thank you. I am, and I hope our audience is very excited to have you here. So we often discuss that the best field service practices here at Fieldman, and especially we talk about utility field projects and the smart meter deployment. And what we have learned is that projects are highly complex and with various factors at play, and work management software is just one element. And quite often, vendors and municipalities end up spending more than planned, and much of this spending could have been prevented. And Vlad will share all the insights with you. So, quick housekeeping things. We are live. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. So if you have to jump off a bit early, it's fine. We will send you a link to the recording, and we will also add it to our website. So I think that's it. Vlad?
All right. Well, thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Like Anna mentioned, that most AMI projects, they tend to go over budget and tend to not stay within the time allotted, or constantly changing and running. The costs go wild. So we see this all the time in the field, and we put together 5 topics that could address some of those budget overruns and could help you to get your project planned and executed properly. All right, so first up is hiring strategy. Now, before we talk about hiring strategy, it is very important to address labor costs, because on AMI deployment, labor costs can be up to 70% of the entire budget. So this is where you spend most of the money, and this is really needs to be addressed and put some strategies in place to control the labor cost. Now, there are two types of labor expenses and how you pay for your labor, right? One is pay per install, and it has its own advantages and disadvantages, and then there's hourly. Now, pay per install, it matches AMI deployment projects because most of the AMI bids require vendors to provide piecework pricing. So if you pay your workers per install, your labor cost becomes fixed, and there's a greater chance you're not going to go over budget. So it's very important to understand that, fixed pricing piecework, and you need to control that on the back end, make sure that your costs are not going over. Now, there are some advantages. Like I mentioned, it's a fixed cost. Another one, huge, is motivation. It's when people get paid per install, they're self-motivated, get things done on time, and you don't have to go and sit and watch them all the time. Most of them will do great. Now, disadvantages. Number one disadvantage is quality. So if you are motivated to get the job done and get paid per install, most of the folks out there will try to rush through the job, get to the next one. That could lead to some quality issues with installations. Now, there are ways to mitigate that. One is to make sure you have a robust workflow that does not allow you to deviate from your task at hand. Another one is audits. Have members audit the work throughout the project, make sure the quality is not suffering, which Fieldman offers both of those functionalities. Now, what we see out there is some of our customers utilize a hybrid approach, which workers get a base pay, and then they get compensated additionally per each installation. This kind of, best of both world approach. It's kind of like at the restaurant, waiter gets base pay, and then they get tips on how well they did that night. So very similar concept. So we think that's great approach. All right, so now let's talk about hiring strategy. So I get that question asked all the time. Would you recommend traveling crews or local hires? Well, it depends on the project, and it depends on the project size, most of anything, right? So the project size most likely will determine which one of those strategies you will choose. On the larger projects that have constrained timeline and have geographically tight, you're not going to have enough local labor available to you that you can tap into and train throughout the project. So most likely you will have to get your traveling crews, in to get that project done. Now, there are some, again, advantages and disadvantages to that approach. Huge advantage, your traveling crew, they hit the ground running. They're usually already trained. They know what to do, how to do. So your deployment numbers will be, be great right off the bat. Disadvantage, high cost. There's expensive. You have to, pay compensation for, accommodate their hotels, travel into the job site, out the job site. That gets costly. Some other disadvantages is folks don't know the lay of the land. A lot of the projects have some sort of neighborhoods situations where you need to be aware of certain things, and and infrastructure, depending on how that infrastructure is it old infrastructure, new infrastructure? So different things could affect that approach. Now, local hire is something that's usually used on the smaller projects because you have enough local workforce that you can tap into. Definitely huge cost savings. And then some of the issues with that is training. You know, you have to train them. So one of the things that I always try to point out that you have to plan on attrition of at least 20%, just to make sure that you know that some folks are gonna come in, get trained, start working, realize it's not for them, and then you just need to, you know, make sure that you have that in your plan. But definitely a cheaper option on the project. We see again a hybrid approach. Some of our clients actually have a core team that is a traveling crew, and then if the project is bigger and they need more folks, they can actually hire some local folks, train them, and kind of expand your team. All right, so next. So next topic is the software that you use on the project. The AMI projects are complicated. They have different moving parts, a lot of moving parts. You got to collect data, you got to create some integrations. There's just different parts to the AMI deployment project. As a matter of fact, every AMI deployment project is different. It's not the same as the last one, and the next one is going to be definitely different from the one that's today. They tend to have different issues come up. So the number one thing that you want to address is pay-as-you-go software. We think is a best option for AMI deployment projects, especially recently where we have so many issues with supply chain. Projects stop for months because of the supply, and then they have to come back and start again. So if you are in the position where you have to pay for the system to keep it up and running while your project is down, well, that's an extra expense you taken on without any revenue to cover it. So we're a software as a service solution, and wanted to make sure that we explain that software as a service solution, which is now a lot more acceptable in different industries, including utilities, that all your costs are upfront. Kind of what you see is what you get. With some legacy software, if you buying servers and support, etc., that could get costly. Again, your project stopped, you still have to pay for all that. You still have to maintain it. With pay-as-you-go solution, you can just put that on hold and come back to it in 3 months. All right. Benefits of work management software that's pay-as-you-go. Affordability, you can get a project start real quick, with very little investment. Flexibility, as I was just talking about, no long-term contracts, so you can really sort of turn on, turn off. And scalability, your project all of a sudden picking up and you got your inventory in, you got to get more people, so you can just add more users and go. All right, next up is choosing the right device for field data collection. Now, I get this question asked all the time. Does your software, does Fieldman support sub-meter GPS? And doesn't matter how many times I answer that, people still believe that software has something to do with sub-meter GPS. Now, sub-meter GPS is a hardware functionality, okay? So hardware really determines how and what you can collect in the field. Now, if your project specifically requiring a sub-meter GPS, then the only way you can collect sub-meter GPS is with a special receiver, which is a GLONASS receiver and it is very expensive. I think the cheapest one I had seen, which was, I believe it's Trimble R2, was around $2,000. And current Trimble unit that's for sub-meter GPS runs about $5,000. So this is way expensive, right? So comparing to a regular, phone that we just recently purchased and tested off the Amazon for $150, that actually comes with a protective case already, and very well performed in the field, cost $150. Huge difference. Again, you kind of have to know what you're collecting and why you're collecting, and if you don't have those special requirements like sub-meter GPS, then today's phones, they're just amazingly affordable with very similar functionality. So if you look at here, this is basically a phone with a GLONASS receiver on top of it. That's all this is. So just keep in mind that if you don't need to collect sub-meter GPS, you can get very affordable devices out there. So one of the things that I had seen done before is that when you do get those requirements like sub-meter GPS collection for an AMI project, right, you can't really afford to put $5,000 device in somebody's hands, and everybody's like, for every installer, right? Because that's just cost prohibitive, first. Second, those type of devices tend to disappear in the field. Again, really hard to recover because they're valuable versus a $150 phone. So they lost it, okay, you just get another one. So one of the specific strategies that we actually had developed was you purchase one device, a dedicated worker actually collects GPS, sub-meter GPS with a separate workflow, and then marries it up. The system will marry it up with a completed installation data, so they kind of come together and present it back to your customer as a sub-meter GPS collected on every install. This way, you don't have to buy 10, expensive units. You get one, and you can have one trusted worker actually who is collecting that data. So I think that's what a great solution, a creative solution that can be used in the field to keep the cost down and provide services per contract. So I think that's a great option. All right, so next up is monitor your productivity. You got to watch your productivity number. There's one simple KPI that we think really helps your team to keep the project on track, right? This is one number you have to look at, and whether or not you're making it. So when you bid AMI project, you usually plan on a specific productivity, right? So let's say you plan on 20 installs per person per day, and that's how you arrive at how many people you're going to need throughout the project, etc. So you have to watch that number constantly. Like when you see that number is going down, this is where you really need to pay attention. You need to get people, either more people or understand why. I think a great example of that would be you see that number going down, and the first thing you need to ask why, right? What's happening? So if you see that everybody's average is going down, that most likely there is an infrastructure issue. Like you get into a neighborhood and, that's where for water meter installation, the piping is just terrible, right? And it's like everyone is leaking and breaking. An electric meter, you get into the meter boxes that are completely, falling off the wall. So each installation becomes a project, right? This is something that's not what you planned on. So that's where you really need to get in and realize it quick, because you can burn through a lot of labor with very little results very quickly, especially on the large projects. You get into a bad neighborhood with bad infrastructure. If you don't pay attention to your average per day per user, you're gonna end up with some huge expenses real quick with nothing to show for it. All right, so with your workforce, what we see is that there's usually three groups. The superstars, people that are self-motivated, they go out and just knock it out of the park every day, right? They just put out some huge numbers. Then you have a steady group. They're sort of middle of the run, but they are meeting your plan day in and day out, right? And then there's low performers that just not making it every single day. Now, one thing about AMI projects, it's a grind. It's day in, day out. And all you need to know is that the group that actually makes the project go forward are not the superstars and not the low performers, it's the steady group. So the people that can get their plan day in, day out, those are the ones that you really need to concentrate on, make sure they stay on the project. With the superstar, those are great, but if you lose one, that's a huge hole that you can't really recover from. You can't just find another superstar. Those are usually far and few in between. Low performers, you really need to cut that early. If you see they're not getting any better and they go through training one more time and it's not improving, just get a next person. Make sure that the steady group that's where it's at, and you just keep that in mind, that those folks are the ones that are actually moving their project. So yeah, we offer some reports to help with that, and so you can keep track of what's going on. At any point of time, you need to make a decision who is your best superstar or who is your steady group, and who you really need to look at, either retrain or realize this job is just not for them. All right, so another topic that we really see that gets very little attention on MI deployment, but ends up costing a lot towards the end of the project, and that is undefined processes for problematic installations, right? So if the installation could not take place because of the infrastructure issues, right? They're called unable to complete installations, right? We see that a lot of projects don't plan on that happening. It's like everybody assumes that all the jobs are going to get completed, all the meters are going to be replaced. That's just simply not the case. The best case scenario is you're going to end up with 3% of meters that are not replaced for one reason or the other. Okay, and the number could be as big as 10, and I've seen actually higher. If the infrastructure is terrible, you can end up with higher than that, and that is a big percentage, right? So you really need to keep that in mind when you are working on the project, and realize that you may not have that 3 to 10% revenue coming to you because you're not able to install it, right? But you still have to have expenses of folks going out there, right? So this is where pay per install makes a lot of sense, because if they did not install it, they don't get paid. So you need to keep that in mind, that if that could actually affect your budget quite a bit. So another thing that we see quite often is there's really not a lot of processes put in place at the beginning of the project, right, to turn over those unable to complete sites back to utility, and that creates an issue towards the end of the project, especially, which I see all the time, that people just don't pay attention to those. They don't manage them throughout the project. They kind of let it sort of sit there. So by the time the project comes to completion, you end up with a pile of unable to complete, and nobody remembers, why they're there, what happened. So the best strategy, and I just can't say it enough, stay on top of your unable to completes, right? Somebody skipped the order, do it weekly, review weekly what's happening, and make sure there's a goal to actually make those either, remediate whatever that issue is so you can get them completed, or talk to your customer and say, hey, this is not happening, we need to take it back so we can mark it as going back to utility, and it's not, it's not shown as uncompleted work, which helps to actually plan your workforce, right, throughout this journey, to make sure that towards the end, right, you don't have this pile of unable to complete, and you still have to keep your labor on site. And those are not easy installs. They're all over the place. So then they're not going to bring you a lot of revenue. And we see that issue come up all the time towards the end of the project. There's a tension between the customer and the contractor saying, hey, I've done my job, and the customer says, well, what about this? This dance we see almost every project. So get that, stay on top of it. Make sure you talk to your client about those issues throughout the project. You can sort of chew on that throughout the project and get that done. Don't put it off till the end of the project. All right. So also reporting, huge. We're huge believers in dashboards. Our dashboards have some of the tools that you can drill into and actually sort of go on a journey figuring out why. So interactive dashboard is a huge plus to any system, specifically plan versus actual. If you have a specific plan and you want to see where you're at, that would be a great place to watch it. So you can figure out whether or not you're on track, and if you're behind, and make plans how to remediate that. So, all right. Those are some of the topics that we covered today. Hopefully it will help you with your journey on AMI deployment. So Anna, back to you.
Yes, Vlad, thank you. It was awesome, amazing presentation. Thank you very much. So I just want to summarize that we talked about 5 topics. Vlad talked about them. So the first one was choosing field workers hiring strategy. Then Vlad talked about implementing a pay-as-you-go software. This can be a great option to reduce costs. Then smartphones. Affordable smartphones can be used by field technicians. So you do not need to pay $5,000 just per one device. Yes, there are other options available on the market now. Then Vlad talked about monitoring labor productivity and choosing the right KPI. And last one, it was about defined processes and reporting for unable to complete accounts, which is also very crucial for AMI deployment project success. So I think we covered, all of it. Thank you, Vlad. So we have actually one question so far. And Jake is asking, we're a municipality with 20,000 households. What kind of electric smart meter would you recommend for AMI? Vlad, you're muted. Yeah, Yeah, unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so we are a software company. We are technology agnostic, so we don't really choose the meters for the customers. Now, I would say if you are a municipality, right, the first thing I would do is talk to other utilities and municipalities in your area. So one thing that we had seen recently is that larger utilities actually allow municipalities and to piggyback their network, which is a great option because if you don't have to deploy the network portion, right, then your meters will communicate through somebody else's network. That's a great option. So I think, for example, in the state of Georgia, Georgia Power allows municipalities to actually piggyback through their Flex network. So just talk to folks in your area. Go to your regional meetings to figure out what other people are using, right? So that could be a cost-saving option for you if you don't have to deploy the network portion, just the smart meter portion. So great question. Yeah, good luck to you with the project.
Thank you. I did not see any other questions, so it looks like we, can wrap it up. So,
all right. Well, again, thanks everyone for joining us. Anna, thank you and your team for putting this together. Hopefully you learned something today. Please come back and review this on demand to, for some, knowledge that hopefully will help you to keep your project on budget and on track. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much. And please don't forget to follow our LinkedIn page. We're going to do more webinars in the nearest future. And we also share some tips on our social media account. So please follow us. And thank you very much. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Bye.